Hi, and welcome to my Adobe Photoshop tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to carry on from my previous video where we added a curves adjustment layer over my image to give it a little bit of pop. Now what I want to do is I want to enhance the clouds in the background and make them look a little bit more defined. I like quite surreal looking clouds. The hard part's trying to blend it into the photo so it doesn't look too obvious that it's completely adjusted and doctored, so to speak. So to do this, we would, in our layers palette, we would click on our circle, half shaded in, and click on levels. Now, when we adjust our levels, we've got to remember that when we are going to ignore the rest of the image. All we're looking at is the clouds. So when we adjust our levels to make our clouds stand out, we're going to find that the rest of the image is going to look pretty awful. But we're going to ignore that because later, once we finish doing our adjustment, we're going to mask in the areas that we want. So that said, basically it's just playing around with the levels until you're happy with the clouds, how you want them to look. So you work on your shadows, bring the shadows down, and your mids and your highlights. You're just adjusting it until you're happy with how the clouds look. As you can see, the rest of the photo looks terrible now. But don't worry about that because we'll fix that up later on. So I want to go with something like that, I think. So I'm finished, so I'm just going to click the little X at the top and it'll save my adjustment layer over the top there. And as you can see, the photo looks terrible now. The clouds look a lot better. And we're going to fix that up in a second. If I zoom in, it's important to notice when we're making a serious adjustment like that to a photo that you're adding a lot of grain to the photo because you're making such a big adjustment, with information that's not really there. You are adding a lot of grain to your photo. So for professional photographers, this might not be the way to go. But for just a bit of amateur kind of having fun with your photos, I enjoy doing it, and I'm not too fazed by a little bit of grain in my photo. Anyway, so I've got that on screen, and now we're going to fix this photo up so the bottom half of the photo looks fine. So making sure that you have your levels layer selected that we just did, and you want to have that little white box there. You want those little things around it to indicate that we have got that little box selected. Now that is called a masking area. So basically, once this is selected, anything that we paint in black, it will delete whatever information is in that adjustment layer. So, for instance, if I click the brush, which is B is a shortcut brush, and I've got my color set to black and white. So if I brush this in black, I'm just going to change my opacity to 100. You'll see that adjustment layer is disappearing now, and whatever's in white, as you can see over here, the adjustments that I've made still remain. And then alternatively, if I press X, which switches the colors here, if I color them back in white, then it all goes back to how it was. So that's sort of how the masking works. Now the best way to sort of do this, I find, is you want to kind of blend the two areas together, because if you just colored in, this one area, the blend doesn't really happen. So the easiest way to get a nice sort of blend is to use a gradient, which is G is a shortcut, or it's just here, gradient tool. Make sure it's just black to white. That's the easiest to work with. Again, make sure you've got the right layer selected, and then just do your gradient. And as you can see, the bottom half's returned to normal, but the top half's kind of gotten all of those layers I just put on. Now that looks pretty good, but still not quite there. I still like the blend's there, but I still want to sort of work on it a little bit more. So after I've done my gradient, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tool, which is B as a shortcut, or just the brush tool. And then I'm going to just sort of do a quick brush around here just to make sure that this section here isn't as dark, because I really just want sort of the clouds and the tips of these sort of mountains in the backgrounds to sort of have that adjustment that I just did. So to do that, I'm going to make my brush tool a little bit bigger. To do that, you sort of click the semicolon. That's not a semicolon. It's hard to explain. Basically, right-click and use the size, and that will adjust the size of your brush. So you can see it's small there, big there. So make it reasonably big. It's not big. Alright, that's a nice size. Okay, I'm also going to drop the opacity down. So the opacity means if I was to brush now at this at 100% opacity, it would literally just brush away that entire thing. Which is fine, but I like just to sort of lower the opacity a bit, which makes, so 47% opacity, when I brush away, it's not brushing 100% off that adjustment layer, it's only brushing 47% of it away. So it's just a bit smoother and helps you blend a lot of the layers together. So now that I've changed the opacity, I'm just going to sort of brush away. I'm in black, remember, because that's erasing. There we go, just a couple of brushes. I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit more because I'm going to do one final one across here. And there we go. So that's just a little bit of extra brushing just to help the blend sort of happen, because I really just want the clouds to sort of look different, not anywhere else. I'm also going to switch the colors. So I'm going to remember the shortcut is X, so I'm going to change it to white. If your colors are different to black and white, just press D, and that will set your colors automatically to black and white. Now, while my layers set to white, I just want to brush in the clouds just to make sure that the clouds are entirely that adjustment layer I've just added, which they are. And that's really it. I'm just going to use the little eyeball here on and off to see the differences I've made, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to clean up these sort of hills in the background. X to change it to black, remember. If you're on white, I'm just going to get in there and there. Just because I don't want them looking too different. I just want them to sort of blend nicely. It's just a matter of playing around, you know. Once you do it a few times, you'll get used to it and it'll be fine. Cool. Alright, now the little eyeball on and off, and as you can see, my clouds have been quite greatly defined. And again, just adds a little bit of depth to your photos. It adds more interest, and it's quite fun to do. I mean, I love clouds, so I usually do this to a lot of my photos, provided there is a reasonable amount of cloud coverage in your photos or some decent looking clouds. I mean, this isn't the greatest cloud coverage I've seen, but it's because it's quite overcast on that day. But it's just got a lot more definition to these clouds now. And as you can see, there is a bit of grain. It's not too bad. I've edited clouds a lot further than this, so this isn't too much for my usual standards. But yeah, that's sort of how you would use levels as an adjustment layer to edit your clouds, just to give your clouds more definition. Stay tuned for more tutorials. Thank you.